Today I just want to talk about man's three basic natures. There are three basic fundamental natures, three categories, if you will, that we all fall into. We fall into one of these three. So I want you to, as I read these scriptures, I want you to decide which nature do you fall into. I'm going to read Revelation 3:15 through 18. I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then because thou art lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods, and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable, and poor and blind and naked. I counsel thee to buy of me gold, tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich. It looks like God has an allergy here, doesn't it? It says, because thou art cold or hot, but because you're lukewarm, I will spew thee out of my mouth. See, God is allergic to average. And if we're ever going to achieve what God wants us to do and become, we have to also become allergic to average. See, I'm going to talk about these three natures very quickly. The first nature mentioned was cold. That cold nature is that sinful nature. It's the nature of bondage. It's the nature of slavery. It's the grind. It's the mundane, right? It's just grinding through. It's the addicted nature. You're addicted to certain things. It's the cold nature. The next nature is that hot nature. This is that purpose-driven nature. It's where you're in alignment with God's will, His purpose, and His calling on your life, where you're impacting people, making a difference and contribution, and you're literally ushering His kingdom on earth. And that last nature is the lukewarm nature. This is the nature that is the most dangerous. It's called average. I call it average. It's that mediocrity. It's that place of insignificance where you're just comfortable. You're just getting by. It's not really bad, but you're not really achieving what God designed you to do. And I thought about, how can one become lukewarm? Well, think about water. How does water become lukewarm? Well, there's a couple different ways. The first way is if it was once hot and the heat is not applied any longer and it cools off, right? There's no more heat being applied and it becomes lukewarm. See, lukewarm in your ministry might look like, man, God brought you out of a lot of bondage, but now we're just sitting on a pew. We just sit there, and if all you do is just sit there a while, you're going to become lukewarm. You're going to become average. You've lost the passion. You've lost that first love of when God delivered you, right? A lukewarm in your business might be, you were excited to start that business, right? You were sharing with everybody you knew, and then all of a sudden you go to training, but you just sit there in training and you've become lukewarm. You're not producing. You haven't shared this with anybody, right? You're wondering why you're so frustrated, right? You're not sharing the gospel when it comes to your faith. You're not sharing your business when it comes to that, right? You become lukewarm in your marriage. It might look like you were passionate. You always made a way. Look, when you were courting your wife, didn't you always go on dates? Before you were married, you were always going on dates. You were excited. You were passionate. You were hot. You were on fire, and you become lukewarm, right? You believe in, every once in a while doing something for your anniversary. Oh, Valentine's Day's coming up, but it's not the everyday thing. Loving on your wife, you become lukewarm, and you're just sitting there on a couch, right? And you've sat there so long that you become lukewarm. I challenge you. I challenge you to get on fire when it comes to your family. Get on fire when it comes to your faith, and get on fire when it comes to your business. Is it your health? Get on fire again. Get passionate again. Stop just getting by. Stop just like, maybe I'll be healthy today. Maybe I'll exercise today. No, get on fire. Become non-negotiable with what you've decided and committed to. See, when you commit to greatness, you're going to create controversy with the people around you. Think of a president, no matter what political side he's on, right? He only wins the popular vote by between 49 and 51%, about 50%, which means half of the country dislikes him. And of that half, most of them violently dislike him. But he still becomes arguably the most powerful position in the world. See, you're not going to please everybody getting to that calling that God has for your life. You've got to become allergic to average. Become allergic to average people. Get allergic to an average job, an average health, an average marriage. Become allergic to it so that you can create passion for that. I'm going to share a couple stories in the Bible. One is in Genesis 13, 12, and 13. It's by the man of Lot. He pitches his tent towards Sodom, right? He pitches his tent towards it. See, the other way you can become lukewarm is if you mix hot and cold. It's called compromise. You want a little bit of the world, you want a little bit of God's kingdom, right? Well, Lot, man, he was a man. He was following after Abraham, the man of God, but now he's pitching his tent towards Sodom. He's not in it yet, but he's watching it. He's looking at it, right? And Sodom was a place of sinners and wickedness exceedingly. See, what are you pitching your tent towards? What's your family pitching their tent towards? You know, every day you wake up, are you just watching the negativity and the news and what society standards are? When you get back home, what are you watching? Are you pitching your tent towards Hollywood and sin and all of this vile, wicked garbage that the world is promoting their agenda? What are you pitching your tent towards? Because a few short chapters later, he's not just pitching his tent towards it. He's now in it, guys. He is in it. In Genesis 19, he is actually a leader in the society of Sodom. He's bought in to their society. And Sodom, see, it represents that first nature, that slavery nature, that cold nature. It's that nature in your marriage. It might look like addiction to pornography, guys. It's that sin that's going to destroy you. In your finances, it might be addiction to overspending as opposed to living below your means. In your health, it's an addiction to just a bad lifestyle and eating. You're not exercising. And I'm just being real. That it's this nature of bondage that you want to get out of. Look, everybody wants to be healthy. Everybody wants to have a great marriage. Everybody wants to have a thriving business. But there are some things we've got to get taken care of. And we've got to get rid of that first nature. See, Carter G. Woodson was quoted saying this: if you can control a man's thinking, you do not have to worry about his action. When you determine what a man shall think, you do not have to concern yourself about what he will do. If you make a man feel that he is inferior, you do not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. If you make a man think that he is justly an outcast, you do not have to order him to the back door. He will go without being told. And if there is no back door, his very nature will demand one. See, if all you're doing is feeding your mind things that are of this world, it's going to start controlling your thoughts and your philosophies and your belief about the world, and that is going to determine your behaviors, and that's their agenda. If you're pitching your tent towards quote-unquote Sodom, if you will, the world, it's going to determine the direction that you go. You've got to come out of that. And that's what Christ did over 2,000 years ago. When he died and suffered for us, he created a door and an opportunity for us to come out of that first nature of slavery, bondage, right? That's what the angels did for Lot. If you read it, he lingered in there. He was addicted to that lifestyle, but they grabbed him and his daughters and brought him out. You know where they brought him? They brought him to the plain, and they said, don't go back. See, we've got to resist the temptation of going back. We start a business and we want to go back at the first sign of adversity. We get married and we want to go back to that at the first sign of adversity. They said, don't go back, but don't. Also, they didn't want him to stay in the plain. They wanted him to go to the mountain. See, Sodom represented the slave nature, and the plain represented that lukewarm nature, and the mountain represented his purpose. And they said, don't go back. Right? But he said, no, I don't want to go to the mountain. I want to go to this place called Zoar. Zoar represented a place of average, lukewarm, media. And literally, if you translate Zoar, it meant insignificance or lukewarm. And he goes there instead of going to his purpose. Why? Because he was scared. See, God's vision for your life will always terrify you. If it's not so big, it scares you half to death, then it's not from God. It's going to be something that causes you to be totally dependent on him. But you've got to resist the temptation of going back. Lot's wife did go back and was destroyed. She went back after that first nature. What about Israel? Come on, they've made movies about this, guys. They're working and grinding in Egypt, which was a type of bondage. What were they doing? They were working for their boss. What? They were creating a kingdom and pyramids for their boss, right? Doesn't that sound familiar? How many people do we know that are grinding at a job to fulfill somebody else's dream? And I'm going to end with that. You know, I saw a quote the other day, guys, and it said, it was about this boss. He was standing next to an incredible Lamborghini car. And the employee said, wow, that's an incredible Lamborghini car. And he says, man, thank you. You know, this year, if you work really, really hard, you put in all your hours, all your overtime, you strive for excellence, right? He says, next year, I am going to get me another one, right? Isn't that what it feels like? And so God will make a way for us. He will present us. Everyone gets opportunity, but we've got to resist the temptation of going back. And I'm going to end with that. So, guys, don't stay in Egypt. but also don't stay in the wilderness. When God brings you through that Red Sea, when he delivers you from the bondage behind you, and he takes care of the bills, and he's providing for you, don't get so comfortable that you decide not to go into the promised land. See, when you want to go to a place of abundance, you have to face some fears. See, right now you might be figuring out who you really are. Maybe you're in a marriage and you just got married, or you just started a business, and what it's doing is it's bringing to the surface who you really are. It's bringing to the surface who you really are. And you've got to face some demons. You've got to start conquering some things within you. You've got to conquer flesh so that you can grow and become. See, God is more concerned with who you become in the process than the actual destination. Right? God wants you to become more. That's what his design for you is. See, it took him just a couple days to get Israel out of Egypt, but it took him 40 years to get Egypt out of them. So you've got to start shifting and changing. And that's what this is all about. So become allergic to average and achieve and become everything that God wants you to be. We'll see you next time.